Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, let's see how we can solve the 14th Leetcode problem, that is longest common prefix. So you'll be given a list of strings basically, and you're supposed to find the longest common prefix in them. So for example, in flower, flow and flight, you have FL as common, right? So yeah, and for dog, race car and car, there is no common prefix, so like just output an empty string. So how can we solve this? Let's move on to the whiteboard. Okay, so now let me stick my marker. Okay, I'll be taking the same example, that is going to be flower, flow and flight. Okay, so you have flower, then you have flow, and then you have flight, right? Okay, so our basic idea behind this is we'll be having a nested for loop. So we'll be having an I loop and a J loop. Okay, so now that's a basic concept on how to solve this. So I'm gonna mention our variables. We'll be having total as 0 by default, count also as 0, and we'll be having our answers list, which will be empty, of course, at the beginning. So let's move on to the main program. Okay, so the main idea is I'll be looping through each alphabet of the first element of the list. So for example, in flower, the first alphabet of the first element is like F, right? So I'll check if the first alphabet of every element in the list is F or not. So in this case it is, right? Flow has F, then even flight has F. So I'll add F to my answers list. Similarly, I'll go to L. Flower, there is L. So I'll check if L is there in is the second alphabet in every element of the list. So for flow as well as for flight, it is, right? So I'll add L also to my answers list. Then I'll check for O. In flower, there is O. I will check if O is the third alphabet in every element of the list. In flow it is, but for flight it is I, right? So I'll break the loop, and yeah, our answer will be FL. So let's see how we can do all that with the help of the dual for loop. Okay, so our for loop will be for I in range. So we'll be going through each alphabet of the first element, right? So for string 0, yeah, so that's basically it. So now our next for loop will be for J in range. All right, so now this will be going through all the elements from the first index. Remember, we don't want to include the 0th index because we are checking all the elements with the 0th index. So yeah, and my apologies, it is not lens, it is just len. All right, so the length of so and so with the length of strs. All right, okay, so I'll say what we do here. So if strs 0 I is equal to strs j count, all right, then we can do total plus equal to 1. So I'll say what this does. So when the loop will begin, we'll be at F, right? So then similarly, when the J loop will begin, we will be at flow, right? So we will check if strings 0 of I. So now when the loop begins, I will be 0, right? So strings 0, 0 is F of flower, right? So we'll check if that F is equal to strings of J count. So count by default is 0 and J will of course be 1, right? Because we are starting the loop, we are starting the J loop from 1. So it will be strings 1, 0. So 1 is flow and the 0 and the alphabet at the 0th index is F. So if it is, we'll do total plus equals 1. So I'll increment total by 1. Okay. Similarly, it will again run the J loop, right? So in this case, it will be J will be 2. So we will check if F is equal to flights 0, that is F. So it is equal, right? So we'll do total plus equals 1. So total will be 2 now. Now we will check if total is equal to the length of the list minus 1. So we want to confirm that we found F in every element of the list except the first element. Okay, so we want to confirm that. So if it is, it means that F is common in each element of the list at the particular index. So we can add F to our answer. So let me erase this. Okay, so now our answer will have F inside of it. We'll have F. All right. So now the I loop will run again. So before that, we'll reset total to 0 and we'll increment count by 1. So now total will be resetted to 0 and count will get incremented by 1. So now count will be 1, right? Okay. So now I will be 1 now. So we will check if strings 0 of 1. So 0 is of course flower and the first index in flower is L. So we will check if L is equal to strings of J count. Okay, so now we know that L is the second alphabet. So we'll compare that with each element of the list. So now if strings 0 of I, which will be L, is equal to strings J of count. So now J will of course begin from 1 again. So now count is 1, right? Because we incremented count by 1. So now count is 1. So it will be L, right? So now L is equal to L. So we'll increment total also by 1. So total will be equal to 1. Then the J loop will run again. It will go to the next element. So of course L is equal to L of flight, right? So we'll again increment total by 1. So now total will be equal to 2. So we will again check if total is equal to the length of the list minus 1. It is. So we'll append that as well to our answers list. So in our answers list, we'll have F, comma L now. All right. Okay. So now what? Now we'll again do the I loop. So now I will be 2. So now it will particularly search for O. Okay. So now if strings 0 of 2, that is O, is equal to strings J of count. So as usual, we'll be resetting total to 0 and we'll be incrementing count by 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So strings J of count is 1 of 2, which will be the second index of flow, that is O. So now O is of course equal to O. So we can append, we will increase total by 1. So now total will be equal to 1. Then what will we do? Then then the J loop runs again. Then strings of J, that is 2 in this case, to count. So now 2 of 2. So now element at the second index is flight and the alphabet at the second index is I, not O. So total won't get incremented. So now after this, when we'll check if total is equal to the length of the list minus 1 or not, it is not, right? Because total is 1 and 1 is not equal to 2. So then what we do is then we'll break the loop, which means that the chain has stopped. Then we can return the joint form of our elements in answer. So now FL will be our answer, right? Because that is the prefix. And yeah, that's basically it. So now that's how you solve this problem. Okay, let's code this whole thing out. So we'll have a variable called answer, which will be an empty list. We'll have total equal to 0, and we'll have also let's do total equals count equals 0. All right, so now the exceptional case is if length of, oh my god, okay, let's just first do this case. If strings is equal to an empty string, then we can return empty strings. Okay, now if it's an empty list, we can return empty strings. So if length of strings is equal to 1, there is only one element, so we can return the same element back. All right, so now for I in range, it will go through the length of string 0. Then for j in range, it'll begin from the first index, right? So the second element till length of strings. Okay, so we will check if count is less than length of strings j. So now why do we do this? Because, like, let's take flight for example. So now in flight, the number of alphabets in flight is 6, right? So 6 alphabet means the last alphabet, that is T in this case, is at the 5th index. So we don't want count to go to the 6th index, right? Like, or we'll get an error saying list index out of range. So we do this for that. Then we can do if strings of 0i is equal to the strings of j count. If it is, then I can increment total by 1. So now if total is equal to length of str is -1, answer dot append strings 0, right? Actually 0i. So now at the end, the only thing left to do is to reset total to 0 and for count to get incremented by 1. At the end, I can return the joint version of the answer. Let's see if this works. It should work. And it works. Let me submit this. It gave me an error saying CIR length of strings. Why did this happen? Okay, I forgot to add an else statement here. We have to, now if it is not equal, I want the loop to break. So now it should work. Let me submit this now. And there you go, it works. So that's how you solve this problem. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as usual, if you have any doubts, leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.